Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fiona Murdoch, and I'm going to be running and hosting this workshop today. I'm going to share my screen now with you all. Anna, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see?
Yep, I can see it. Looks good.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As I said, my name is Fiona Murdoch. I'm the program director at BEN, Bermuda Education Network, and I want to welcome you all to our workshop today, and that is for our P2 workshop on light from other sources, where we are partnering with Bermuda Underwater Exploration Institute to do this expedition. So welcome, everyone. Just to give you a brief overview of those of you who have not come across our network, Bermuda Education Network was founded in 2011 by Becky Asunda to address the achievement gap between public and private school systems. As you can see by the graphic, we have had access to over 100 teachers who we've supported and 750 students who've received services, and about 5 programs that we have developed and that I oversee. Some of the services and programs include BEN Book Club, which is for preschool and P1 students, which fosters a love of reading at an early age. Our Horizons program, which is this program that you are involved in. And this, as you know, we offer field trips and cross-curricular workshops and provide resources, including lesson plans, activities, etc., all of which will be on our website, and you can see at the end of this. We partner with various organizations, including BUI, who Hannah will be talking about in this workshop. We more specifically have a summer reading program in the camp for students who are approaching grade level near the end of P3. And those, it's not for students who have significant interventions, but those who need an extra boost. And this 3-week camp is free of charge for parents and open to public school students, and it's overseen by our network teacher, Kelly Roday. So just a little bit of information about me. I am Bermudian, mother of 2, and have been teaching for about 25 years, both in public and private education. I work in the area of cross-curricular and STEM education, and I've done so for a number of years. Currently, as I mentioned, I am the program director at BEN. I've held professional development workshops both for educators and corporate clients for the last few years in my previous role at Bermuda Clarity Institute. And most recently, we provided professional development for the BUT annual conference last October at the BZS for our Horizons program. And so my main role in this as program director is overseeing all these various programs and liaising with students and teachers and the community at large. Today, our agenda, we're focusing on our P2 expedition, Light from Other Sources. We are going to cover standards that are covered by this expedition. And then I'm going to review the various lessons that we are offering to you as teachers that you can do in joint session with this expedition. Latoya, can I just ask that you check in to see if anyone else has joined while we're going through the slides? I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. So the standards covered in these lessons for science, you can see the various 2 through the twos, 2PS02, know that darkness is the absence of light. Know there are many light sources, including the sun. Describe the apparent movement of the sun during the day. Identify how we use electricity and describe how to be safe with it. Recognize components of simple circuits. Explore the construction of simple series circuits. And then with the ELA, describe story settings and characters, identify the characteristics of simple stories, and using phonetic knowledge to decode familiar words. So we're going to make a start with lesson 1, light sources. This particular lesson, the science standards 2PS 0.02 and 2PS 01, know what darkness is the absence of light. Know that there are many light sources, including the sun. Describe the apparent movement of the sun during the day. The objectives, understanding that we need light to see things and it comes from different sources. Identify different light sources, including the sun. Understand that dark is absence of light. The scientific inquiry that students would be using is to use firsthand experience and simple information sources to answer questions. Explore using the senses as appropriate, make and observe observations and measurements. And finally, resources that you would want to have. Oh, beg your pardon. Is set up dark role play area, provide box of shiny sparkling materials, colored acetate, reflective strips to explore, etc., flashlights, and so on and so forth. So the first lesson we're going to look at whole class work, group work, as well as individual work for those students who might need extension or for those that need more one-on-one. Starting with your whole class, really sort of investigation and discussion with your children, asking them about what happens when they open their eyes or they cup their hands over their eyes and slowly open their hands, and doing it several times. You know, when your hands are completely over your eyes, could you see your fingers or color of sin? Why not? What happens if you open your fingers a tiny bit? So these are all questions that you would ask to start getting the children really thinking and using their inquiry skills for dark and light, and recording comments, questions, or responses, say on a flip chart or whiteboard, etc. Something that they can save, you can save and return to at the end to assess the students' learning. You can also go out for a walk around the school and look for light sources other than the sun, ceiling lights, computer monitors, warning lights, lights. You might have overhead lights in a hall, etc. Making the point that also that shiny objects are not light sources, but reflecting light. Light might come directly to your eyes when you look at the light source, or it bounces off objects to your eyes when you see other things. So really getting them to understand what it is that source of light is and where it comes from. Continuing on, this group activity, adult-led, so teacher-led, providing students with flashlights and, for example, sticks with plasticine to stick them in, or straws and cardboard shapes. For example, a rectangle with a zigzag cut out from one side can make an interesting shadow patterns. Encouraging students really to explore what happens when they change the angle of the torch and to discuss the shadows. You know, how can you make the shadow of the stick longer or shorter? So that they get to explore and find out, well, what happens when you walk closer to the object? What happens when you walk further away? What happens to the shadow? Could you draw shapes if you projected them onto paper? Could they draw around them, for example? So that's something that could be done as a whole group. And then independent, could they use the same light sources, flashlight, lamp, candle, fairy lights? You know, there are pictures of light sources I'm going to share with you in a minute. Having them drawing these drawings and labeling as appropriate. For plenary, at the end, ask your students to help make a list of all the light sources they know to record on a flip chart or whiteboard or in a book. Extension might be to ask, is a shiny object of a light source? Some objects seem bright, but they're only reflecting light. And so here are some examples of some resources that you might use to help you actually get them to start using that inquiry based learning so that they have somewhere to write down their own if you wanted to do independent work or to help them with gathering their thoughts. And again, resources like showing them different types of sources of light from the sun, a lighthouse, a light bulb, flashlights, a lantern, a firefly, a warning light, lights from buildings, reflection from water, etc. Second lesson, we want to discuss the apparent movement of the sun. So the objective of this particular lesson is to describe the apparent movement of the sun during the day, explore the relationship between the size and the position of the shadows and the position of the sun. And they can make sundials to use outdoors. Introducing the lesson would be talking about the sun appears to move across the sky, but things are not always as they appear. And this activity provides a concrete connection to the sun through direct observation of sunlight and shadows. It prepares students for an upcoming discussion and modeling of the sun's apparent motion across the sky. And the main activity was to track the sun's movement during different times of the day using simple tools like sundials or even drawing, to discuss observations and connect them to the Earth's rotation. And Hannah will talk about how they're going to do some of this discussion during your BUE lesson. And again, finishing off with inviting the students to comment on the fact that you've been talking about the apparent movement of the sun, that it appears to move. Does the sun really move across the sky? Is there another explanation for the pattern we have observed? So having them draw conclusions and really thinking about, well, what are we talking about? Why does this or does this not happen? What do we know? So two of the activities that you could do in this lesson, exploring the relationship between the size and position of shadows and the position of the sun, and making the sundials, as I said. So this is one of the activities that you can do, and it takes about an hour. Creating, and it doesn't have to be making a safe, obviously you have to have a nice well-lit day so that you can see shadows. Various large piece of paper, ruler, yardstick, or we've given the example of, say, a plunger, because it already has a stick and it's easy to stand up, allowing them to go outside and see what happens when you put that object down and the shadow that it creates, measuring that shadow, then leaving it, and then come back and then measure again. Well, what happens? Asking them to really inquire what happens in that time. So that's the first part of the lesson. And then the second part would be, while they're perhaps in between waiting for the sun to move and the shadows to change, you can go in and create their own sundial. And so we have these, as I said, we'll have all these resources on our site, but having them create their own, and then talk a little bit about how sundials were used before we had watches, and what does that mean when the shadow is on a certain time? Can we figure out what time it is? And, this is another great lesson that the kids can actually get involved in. And when we take our sundial outside, can we also see what changed during the time? So two great lessons that can be done in conjunction with under the one topic. And now I'm going to turn it over to Hannah who's going to talk about your actual expedition and what they will be covering during that time.
Cool.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Hannah.
Fiona. Yeah, so this will be our first time doing P2. We normally do it as a P4 subject, but I'm excited. I've found some fun new experiments. So just Fiona, you read out the rubric already, but you can hit next anyways. We'll look
Okay.
at it quickly. So yes, it'll be myself, my Miss Hannah, and then Miss Julie is my colleague. So it'll be one of us, depending on our days. And so yeah, this is the learning objectives that we're following. So we'll be doing experiments with each one. So know that darkness is absence of light. Know that there are many sources of light, so we'll have them have to choose and pick which things are natural light, unnatural light, and sources of light. And then we're also going to be doing a little bit on electricity, so electricity in around them, so static electricity, and then also just doing simple circuits. So here's some examples, the pictures. Do you want to hit next for me, Fiona? So these are, we'll be playing with the shadows, and experimenting with like opaque, translucent, transparent objects and how the light travels through those things, how light travels in a straight line. I also have made little mirror boxes for them to create sort of geometric patterns. It's kind of like a kaleidoscope activity. And then we have these simple circuits here. You can see these three girls. And then also exploring about how light travels through the ocean, because when talking about darkness is the absence of light, that is very apparent in the deep sea, because there's no light down there. And so then just always bringing it back to the ocean, because that's what we're all about at BUEI. And then also static electricity experiment, exciting and fun. And then we'll finish with like a colored light shadow activity. And we also have some prisms, so making rainbows. And yeah, so I look forward to that with you guys. If you want to hit next, Fiona, you'll be booking your classes with Latoya, but if you're looking for any other subjects, history, physics, social studies, you name it. So yeah, be sure to check it out. And you can use this is my email here, at direct contact. So I'm doing all the programs in the classes. I look
Great.
forward to meeting everybody. Thanks.
Thanks, Hannah. Okay. So just so our last lesson, or perhaps two lessons, is really talking about our content literacy element that we always include in all our expeditions. As some of you may be aware, we always offer a book to support our expedition. And this expedition's book is called Oscar and the Moth, a book about light and dark. And so these lessons really talk about, or talk to, covering those ELA standards about describing story settings and characters, identify characteristics of simple stories using phonetic language, or phonic language rather, to decode familiar words. And really we want to go back to and relate what they've learned about light to the book, and be able to identify or create stories about that particular topic. So reading Oscar and the Moth, begin to reading it aloud in class, with your class, engaging students in discussion about the story settings and characters related to light sources, prompt questions such as, where does light come from in the story? Can you name other sources of light? So really confirming their knowledge and understanding from perhaps previous lessons. Story elements discussion, reviewing the story settings and the characters from Oscar and the Moth, and encouraging the students to describe these elements and their connection to light sources in the story. Word decoding activity, select some unfamiliar words from the book related to light sources, break these words down phonetically and discuss their meanings, encouraging students to use their phonic knowledge to decode and understand these words. And then creative light writing, have students create their own short stories incorporating light sources as a central theme. Encourage them to use descriptive language and include characters. So could they, if you do it after you've been to BUE, for example, could they create a story about their trip to viewing what they experienced. Might be a nice introduction or confirmation of what they have learned so far. And then integrating tip, just connecting the story's theme of light sources to the science by discussing how sunlight is a natural source of light and it's important to plants, animals, and everyday life. Students can draw connections between the story's element and scientific facts about light sources. And this program really integrates the book Oscar and the Moth into discussions about light sources while encouraging students to explore story elements and phonetic decoding of unfamiliar words related to the story's theme. And I would imagine you probably could do that in 2 lessons. So that would cover maybe 5 lessons altogether. And so that's really our P2 workshop expedition will be starting next week, the 15th. I'm going to actually hand it over to Latoya, who's going to discuss details. But we do want to thank you for coming, and I know you're going to look forward to your expeditions next week. We'd love it if you would share feedback, not just about this workshop, but about the expedition. And this, as I said, this workshop and this slide deck will be on our website that you can go back and check the resources. So we will be sharing those probably in the next week. But there's my email. If you have any questions or want to share, we'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you have photos of your expedition, then that would be wonderful too for us to add to our social media. Latoya, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Fiona. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Latoya Pearman. I'll be handling the scheduling, coordinating the minibus service for these field trips. So I just wanted to let you know that all the signups are now available on the Sign Up Genius. The dates are available. And just draw your attention to the date. So we'll be starting next week, Monday, the 15th, and we're going to be doing Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Of note, on Tuesdays, we will have a morning expedition and we will have an afternoon expedition. I have marked on the Sign Up Genius that we're going to try to coordinate those trips by school zones. So we're asking that the Western Zone schools book together Central and Eastern, obviously for transportation consideration. We don't want to end up with too many days where we have St. George's Prep doing the same time as West End. So it just makes for a very difficult trip. So we're just asking if you select a Tuesday, just make sure you're in the correct zone. Otherwise, if it's a Monday or Friday, you can pick any of those days. All right. And that's all I have for you. You'll be hearing from me regarding your minibus transportation. Okay. Thank you.
Great. And finally, as I said, the link to the teachers' resources will be on our site probably by the end of the week. But if you need something a little earlier than that, please just reach out to me. Again, it's fiona.murdoch@ben.bm, or just go on our Ben website, www.bermudaeducationnetwork.com, and you can get all the information that you need from there. Are there any questions before we sign off? Okay, I think that was great. Thank you, Hannah, for staying with us and for sharing. I wish everyone luck and hope you enjoy your expedition. And again, please reach out if you have any questions. And we'll be hopefully seeing you soon.
Cool. Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, look
Thanks
forward to
very
it.
much.
Talk soon.